No one expected the quiet graduation to shift like it did. Not when 2 guards approached a black Marine with the intention of moving him from his seat. And certainly not when 6 Navy SEALs rose from the crowd without a single word. Solomon Dryden didn't think anyone would recognize him, not when he pulled into the rear parking lot behind Elmridge High School. It looked like every other small-town Texas school, weathered bricks, flags dancing above the doors, kids in clusters near the gym. He parked near the fence, stepped out of his Dodge Charger. His dress blues were flawless, boots polished sharp, enough to catch the morning light. Not to impress anyone, it was just the way he'd always shown up. As he closed the door, he paused and pulled out a worn photograph from the glove box. A picture of his wife, holding their baby boy, Tieran. He slipped it into his jacket, just over his heart. "I told you I'd be here," he whispered. The gym was loud. Popcorn, old floors, parents and cousins finding seats. He handed his printed ticket to a volunteer at the door. The man barely glanced and pointed. "3rd row, left. Family section." "Thanks," Solomon said with a nod. His voice calm but heavy. He walked with the bearing of someone who had lived through storms. Not rushing, not hesitating. People stared. Some glanced and looked away. One woman whispered something to the man beside her. Solomon didn't flinch. He'd seen that kind of look before. Often. He took his seat without fuss. The plastic chair wobbled slightly beneath him. Ahead of him, a stage silver letters declaring class of 2024. He scanned the students. Tieran was out there, lanky, tall, with eyes just like his mother's. Solomon remembered the day he was born, still in fatigues, dirt under his nails. For days. Lee from Okinawa. 18 years had vanished. Behind him, the noise built, laughter, programs rustling, a coffee cup hitting the ground. But Solomon's world had narrowed. Just the stage, the memory pressed against his chest, and the moment the ceremony began, the music played, everyone rose. Solomon stood too tall, proud, still. When the national anthem followed, others placed hands on hearts. He didn't need to, he was the salute. Then came the shift. 2 men in black polos moved down the aisle. They weren't police, private security, young, maybe early 30s. One built like a tank, the other lanky, bored. They stopped beside him. "Sir, we're gonna need you to come with us," one said, keeping his voice low. Solomon turned slowly. "Is there a problem?" "This section's for graduates' families," the other added, almost dismissively. "I am family," Solomon said, pulling out his ticket. 3rd row, left side, family confirmed. The shorter one didn't even glance at the paper. "Yep. Well, we were told it's full now." "It was full when I sat down too," Solomon replied evenly. "Who told you that?" The guard shifted, suddenly less confident. "Look, no need to make it into something. We got extra seats in the back." Solomon's expression stayed composed. "I didn't come here to sit in the back. I drove 8 hours. I'm staying right here." Heads began turning. A few phones lifted quietly. Someone nudged their spouse. The air grew tight, that invisible tension when everyone knows something's wrong, but no one says it. The shorter guard stiffened. "I'm asking again." Solomon leaned back slightly, voice low. "You can ask all day. I'm not moving." The taller one rolled his eyes. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." There it was. Not about policy, not about seating. It was about place, about belonging, or not belonging. Solomon knew that sound. He'd heard it at check-ins, waiting rooms, even in uniform. He said nothing. The crowd felt the change. The mood shifted like weather before a storm. The older woman next to him leaned in. "Don't let them push you," she whispered. He nodded. Once the guards didn't stop. "If you've got a problem," the taller one said, lowering his voice, "take it to the office. We've got orders." Solomon looked at him. "Got a name, son?" "Officer Malley," he answered. "Not officer," Solomon said. "You're private security." The shorter one stepped up. "That's enough." Stand, or he didn't finish. Because the far gym door opened, and 6 men entered. No uniforms, no words, just presence. Controlled, still, watchful. They took seats separately, spread out like they weren't connected. But anyone paying attention could tell they moved. Like a unitest sat like brothers. Solomon didn't turn. He didn't have to. He knew them. The guards didn't, but they were about to. He wasn't angry, not yet. But something inside Solomon clicked like a switch he didn't use unless survival demanded it. It wasn't rage. It was readiness. A readiness carved from war, pressure, and years of knowing how to stand without flinching. The 2 guards didn't move. They loitered not to protect, but to project. They wanted to remind him who had authority here, but they didn't realize Solomon came from places where authority meant life or death, where hesitation cost lives. Not folding chairs and sound systems in a suburban gym. From the stage, a name was called. Polite applause followed. But nobody near Solomon was watching the ceremony anymore. They were watching him, watching them, pretending not to. The tall one, Malley, leaned in again, tone softer now. "I'm trying to help you here. This doesn't need to get messy." Solomon didn't blink. "You don't have that kind of help to offer." Malley backed off, uncertain now. But the shorter one, Garvin said so on his badge, didn't like being challenged. His hand hovered near his radio. That subtle threat, like pressing a panic button for ego. But then, behind them, a man stood. Quiet, intentional. No words, just presence. Arms folded. Watching then, another man stood. Opposite side. Same silence, same steel posture. Then a third. Stillness. With weight. Solomon didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew those men. Had led them through firefights in silence so deep it could bury your name. Garvin leaned again. This time frustration leaking out. You're turning this into something, man? Solomon slowly turned his head. No, you're not listening. Garvin's fingers twitched toward his radio, but before the tension could snap, a voice cut through from just a few feet away. Is there a reason this man's being harassed? It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was measured. And the entire gym seemed to go still. The man stood tall. Salt and pepper beard, black coat. Gaze that had seen worse than this. Creed, Marston, the man Solomon, had dragged out of a crater in Kandahar while bullets fell like rain. Garvin looked up, startled. Who are you? Creed didn't answer the question. He stepped forward. I asked you something. Mally stepped in, nerves catching up. Sir, we've got this handled. No, Creed said, his voice suddenly sharper. You don't. From the bleachers, another man rose. Then another. Now, 4 of them. All quiet, all watching. The air shifted again, not from fear, from respect. A kind of silent gravity began to form around Solomon. Creed stepped forward again. You're embarrassing yourselves. And you're one breath away from something you won't recover from, Garvin faltered. Mally looked lost now. The room had turned, and he felt it. Creed's voice didn't rise, but it struck like a hammer. I don't care who gave the order. You don't lay hands on that man. You don't ask him again. You don't even think about making him move. Solomon finally lifted his gaze, locked eyes with Creed, and nodded once. Not thanks. Just acknowledgement. Creed sat back down. But the gym was holding its breath. The sound of names being called returned, distant. Parents clapped louder than necessary, trying to restore normal. But attention had shifted. Now everyone was watching the third row, where Solomon sat unmoved. Where 2 guards stood, frozen, and Solomon. His body stayed present. But his mind had slipped 15 years into the past. Afghanistan, Kandahar province. Late afternoon, the sun crashed down like a weapon. He remembered the briefing, the sharp wind, the sudden roar as a roadside bomb flipped their lead vehicle like a child's toy. No time to think, only smoke, fire, and screams. He remembered the 6 men pinned. Creed, crawling through blood with a bullet in his thigh. Soto, gasping beside him. Divas trapped beneath an engine block, calling out, and Solomon, not waiting, just running, through gunfire, through heat, through hell. He remembered lifting that hood with shaking arms, enough for Divas to slide free. He remembered dragging Creed with one arm and covering him with the other. No cheers followed that day, only breath and silence. But after that day, none of those men ever forgot, and they never left him behind. Back in the gym. Creed sat silently, but his fists were clenched. His jaw set. Solomon, the man who once walked him out of a war zone, was being challenged for sitting at his son's graduation. A few more seals filtered into the crowd. Javier Meeks, Zachary Wells, all quiet, all watching. Solomon looked just once, and saw Meeks. That was enough. The guards didn't understand what those glances meant. Not yet, but they would. Garvin, still planted in front, glanced to the front where a school official tried to signal. She looked worried. Subtle hand gestures, silent words. Back off. But Garvin shook his head. He wasn't done. His ego was louder than the logic now. Mally chewed harder on his gum, jaw twitching. Sir, Garvin said, voice louder. Last warning. Solomon didn't budge. To do what, exactly? Garvin stepped closer, belt brushing Solomon's knee. To stop making a scene. Solomon looked up, firm and cold. You're the only one making one. And then it slipped. The mask? You think wearing that uniform makes you better than everyone? This is a high school, not your base. A hush hit like thunder. A little girl stopped fidgeting. A man froze with his camera. Even Mally stepped back a little, the words landing harder than he expected. They had crossed a line, and the room knew it. Solomon didn't flinch. He drew in a breath not to calm himself, but to anchor his soul. He said softly, walk away. But Garvin didn't. Instead, his hand slid toward his belt knot on his weapon, but close enough to send a message. That's when Creed rose. No shouting, no grandstanding, just a calm, deliberate step into the aisle, like this had just become his mission. The gym wasn't silent, but it was close. Creed's voice cut through the air like a blade. If you lay a hand on him, you'll answer to me. Garvin turned, scoffing. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Creed took another step. The one telling you this ends. Now. A school board member whispered urgently to the principal. An assistant principal started toward the back, hand on her walkie, eyes sharp. Staff was finally waking up. This wasn't just going to blow over. Then it happened one by one. Other men rose. No words, no signals. Just instinct. Now 6 of them were standing spread across the room like anchors in a storm. Garvin scanned the space. These weren't just upset parents. They didn't twitch. didn't waver. Their presence was like air before thunder. Creed stepped in closer. You've got two options. Turn around, or watch this fall apart. Mally's voice cracked. Come on, men, let's just walk away. Still Garvin hesitated. Solomon spoke again, not to the guard, but to Creed. Don't waste your breath. He already chose. Creed didn't grin. He just said low and firm, don't confuse silence with surrender. That was the end of it. Garvin stepped back not by much, but enough. His hand dropped, his face flushed. He'd been outmatched by presence alone. The principal appeared at the aisle and whispered to security. Whatever she said worked. They were escorted out, not meeting anyone's eyes. Solomon exhaled. Slow. Creed sat back down, never said a word. The others stayed on their feet and across the gym. A teenage boy named Tyron Drayton was watching every second. Narrator soft, emotional tone. He stood in line, third from the stage between a girl with bright braids and a boy wrestling with his gown. Around him, students laughed nervously, checked their name cards, tried to pretend everything was normal, but for Tyron, nothing was. He'd seen them the moment the anthem ended. Two guards, walking toward his father. At first he hoped they were helping someone find a seat, but something in his gut said different. Then he saw it, the way his father sat stone still. But braced, he'd seen that look once before, when he came home at 12, eyes red, heart bruised. Someone had said something they shouldn't have. His dad didn't yell then, either. He just held that same unshakable stillness. Now, in that plastic chair, he sat the same way, centered, steady, immovable. Tyran couldn't hear the words, but he didn't have to. He saw the stance, he saw the stranger rise. A tall man in a dark coat, and somehow he knew that man wasn't random. He knew Solomon. He was here for Solomon. And then another stood, and another. The air changed, not loud, not chaotic, but something had shifted. Tyron's chest tightened. He wasn't scared. He was something else, burning with pride. He remembered stories, pieces his dad never told. Fully a dusty box marked Kandahar, a scar with no tail, a folded flag, a medal that never left its case. He'd never seen the faces, but now, they were here, and they stood without a word, because they never really stopped standing with his father. Tyron blinked hard. He wouldn't cry, not now. The line moved. Names were called. Applause picked up again like someone had hit play, but the air wasn't the same. This wasn't just a ceremony anymore, it was a reckoning. An assistant principal tapped Tyron's shoulder, said something. He didn't hear it. Someone whispered, "That your dad?" Tyron didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone had seen, everyone knew. Solomon Drayton wasn't just a father in a chair. He was a legacy, a pillar. And every man who stood had made it undeniable. Tyron stepped forward, 3 students away. He smiled when the girl in front of him asked, "You ready?" He whispered back, "More than you know." When the announcer reached his name, her voice slowed, just a heartbeat's pause. Then she cleared her throat. Tyron Drake. The name rolled across the room like thunder before rain. Then silence just for a blink. And then applause. Not loud because it was loud, but loud because it meant something. Not random, not wild, rhythmic, powerful, earned. 6 men still standing at the back. Uniforms crisp, eyes sharp, clapped in perfect unison, not as a show, but as a statement. It was more than approval, it was honor. A silent salute, a message that said, "We see you. We see where you come from." Tyron walked the stage slowly, his steps steady, his head high. He wasn't nervous. He was full of pride, of legacy. He shook the principal's hand, took the diploma, then turned to the crowd. His eyes searched, found the man in the 3rd row. Solomon, no wave, no cheer, just a quiet, powerful smile, and that was enough. Ty nodded once and stepped down, but the air didn't go back to normal. Something had shifted. Even those who hadn't clapped all ceremony stood now. Some wiped their eyes, not fully understanding why, just knowing they'd witnessed something real. Outside, after the ceremony, sun beating down on the pavement, the crowd buzzing in celebration, Tyron spotted him, by the flagpole, half his gown unzipped, diploma in one hand, phone in the other. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw his father. Their eyes met. "Are you okay?" Tyron asked. Solomon nodded. Yeah, Tyron said, jaw tight. "They tried to move you. I know. I was this close to stopping the ceremony, too." Calling it out, Solomon put a hand on his shoulder. "And that's why you didn't." Tyron blinked. "Because you knew I could handle it. Because you were handling your moment." "Exactly." Tyron looked back toward the exit. The men who stood, Who were they? Solomon glanced that way. 6 SEALs. Off to the side, not trying to be seen. "Men I bled beside," he said. "Men who don't forget what matters." Tyron nodded. That was powerful. It was necessary. Solomon replied, "Some things are louder in silence." A pause. Tyron smiled. "You gonna tell me those stories now? Some of them? You're finally old enough for the parts that matter." Later, as the crowd thinned and the lights softened, they walked toward the old Charger, the one his mother used to drive. Tyron ran a hand over a scratch near the door. "She would have made you retake every photo today," he said. Solomon chuckled. "She'd have screamed the loudest." "Inside the car, safe from the noise?" Tyron asked. Why didn't you say anything when they tried to move you? Solomon replied, because I don't need to prove who I am, and I don't need to raise my voice to be heard. Tyron looked out the window, quiet. They disrespected you. Yes, Solomon said, but everyone saw what happened, and they saw who stood up not for a show, but because they knew what that moment meant. Solomon pulled out an old photo, a younger Tyron in his mother's arms. I carried this through war, through grief, and through today. Not for strength, for remembrance. Tyron whispered, you always knew who had your back. I didn't need to know, Solomon said. I just had faith. As they pulled out of the lot, Tyron grinned. So what now? Solomon smirked. Now, we drive, and you choose dinner. Waffle House, Tyron said. Of course. Solomon laughed. Behind them, the school faded. But something deeper stayed that day. Wasn't just a graduation. It was a mark of manhood. Not earned through noise, but by carrying yourself with dignity, even when no one is watching.